Hello and welcome to a new episode of Athletics for Life podcast. We're your hosts, Jeff and CD. And on our show, we like to interview interesting people in the world of sports, people that have learned lessons through sports and have carried those with them into their current role. This year, we're focused mostly on interviewing athletic directors in Asia, to get an idea of how do they run their programs, what are some cool and interesting things that they've done, either in the past or are currently doing with the challenges of COVID. And today is no exception. We've got a great guest for you with a ton of experience. So Jeff, if you don't mind, could you we're both going to interview. Could you introduce our guest?
I will introduce and then interview the guest. But thanks, CD. Another great guest for you guys lined up. We're going all over Asia and to talk to different people in the world of sports, ADs, activities coordinators, PE teachers. Today, we're going down south for us. We're going to India. We're going to Bangalore. We're going to talk to John Bertken. You might have seen his name. He writes also some articles for School Rubric. That's how I found him. He works in Bangalore at Stonehill International School. He's been in Korea before, originally from the US, tons of experience, like CD said already. So I think you should just get your notebooks out and watch the podcast and write some stuff down because he has some really good things to share with us all.
All right. Hope you enjoy.
Enjoy, everyone.
All right. We're here with John Bertken. John, if you don't mind, just take a little bit and tell us a little about yourself. Where you're at in the world now and how you ended up there.
So my personal journey, I'm born and raised in San Francisco and grew up there, and very international city. So I had a lot of exposure to the world growing up. And something when I went to college, I began as an English major, but I had no intention of becoming a teacher because there's no money in it, right? And so I started out as a business consultant for the first 4 years of my career after college. But then I found that, it wasn't really going anywhere. It wasn't really personal satisfaction in the job, right? And with the guidance of a mentor, he directed me back into education. And I thought, oh my God, how ironic is this? I'm back in education. But the reason was because I enjoyed coaching so much. I had started coaching in high school and I had played sports in high school and college, and sports is a big part of my life. And he thought, well, sports is education and, so you should get into it. And so I started out working in the worst public school, the worst district in San Francisco, toughest area in San Francisco in public schools. But to be honest with you, the kids were great. It was really an eye opener and it was a great deal of excitement, but then I was introduced to the international circuit, and never gone back since. So I started out going to Korea. I was in Korea for 4 years, where I met my wife, and my daughter and my wife and I came back to San Francisco. We had an opportunity to work at it's an international network of schools called the Schools of the Sacred Heart. You might be familiar with them. And the way they're set up traditionally is with a girls' high school and 2 separate gender elementary schools. Well, this was going to be the first all boys, it's Catholic high school in the world, right? And so they were just starting out. So I had that opportunity to go back and work there. And I started there as an English and history teacher and coaching. And then as the school grew, I took over the athletic department. And so I was there for 13 years. And in those 13 years, once my daughter graduated from high school and she was going off to college, it was a perfect opportunity for my wife and I to fly the coop and get her back to Korea, since she had spent so many Thanksgivings and Christmases with me. It was an opportunity for us to go back and spend some Chuseok and Solas with her and her family. So I went back to Korea. I took a job as the director of residential life on the island of Jeju. And if you know anything about Jeju, Jeju is the Hawaii of Korea. And so that was beautiful. It was a great opportunity there. And then, ironically enough, someone who I had coached against when I was in Korea the first time, was the head of school up near Seoul, at a school near Seoul. And he called me and said, "Hey, how would you like to get back in being an athletic director?" And so I moved up to Seoul and worked for him for 4 years. And then he had the opportunity to come to India. And the opportunity also meant that there was a position open for an athletic director in India. And he said, "Great, you should come. It's awesome. The school's got the, sports in the mission statement. And, I've never seen a school that had sports in the mission statement. And it's got great facilities. It's got the Center for Sports Excellence next door. It's a wonderful school." And I thought, great, yeah, but it's India. I'll come visit you, man, but I'm not sure about living in India, right? But we did a little research and we found that Bangalore is where we're located. Very similar to the Bay Area where I grew up, and as far as weather, mild weather all year round, maybe 10 degrees hotter. But really, if you're going to be in India, this is as far as weather goes, this is the place to be. And so we thought, it's going to be an adventure for sure. But it's a great opportunity. And so I followed him. We came over here and then COVID hit. So that's my journey.
Great. Yeah, that's an awesome journey, actually. I'm very sorry for the 49ers, John, just on the podcast here. Sorry for that, but it was a great game. It's funny how small this world is, right? The networking, and you just, someone that you coach with, and then you go there. Can you talk a little bit more about your role right now in Bangalore at Stonehill, right? If I'm correct. What does the sport program looks like? What is your specific role? And a little bit more about the conference that you are joining and about that.
Sure. So when I came here, even though the school had sports in its mission statement, it had very little sporting programs. They were involved in one conference called ISACI conference, which is an Indian conference that had a school in Hyderabad, Pune, Delhi, and ourselves, so 4 schools in the conference. But it really limited the opportunities to play, right? And the mission statement said enhance the opportunities to play. So before I even came here, I started working on developing a conference they would be called the Bangalore Activities and Athletics Conference. And it's more modeled after what we have in the States, where you don't just have one tournament that you practice for. Typically I found that here in India that they practice 6-7 weeks, and then they play one tournament, and they call that a conference. What I'm used to is a conference where you're playing every week. You have games every week, you got opportunities to compete. And so what myself and the athletic director at Canadian International School, he's also from the States, we got together and we convinced 5 other schools to put this conference together. And so right off the bat, it tripled the amount of teams that we had, right? So we had opportunities now for primary students to play sports. They didn't exist before. And more opportunities for middle school and high school. So that's, so that's one thing. So we're building up the program, and we get here. So in July 2019, right, we get here and we start this program, and then COVID hits. So my job when I first came here was to really, again, build up the athletic program. But then I guess looking at the activities program, it also needed some help. And so I was asked to take over the activities as well, starting 2020. And again, we haven't had activities for the last couple of years, but it's given me an opportunity to look at it creatively, right? And look at the online atmosphere. And then, there's some benefits to the online atmosphere, really, or the environment is, the idea that we can get online, like right now, we're communicating in global. We're not in the same room. We're all around the world when we're communicating. And so the students can do that too. And so I was trying to find ways of getting online and trying to create athletics or activities, not athletics so much, in a virtual environment. So that's kind of what I've been doing right now at this school.
Yeah, that's what a time to make a transition like that, right? You just get something off the ground, and then the globe has other other ideas. I'm curious though, I'm sure we'll get into more specifics about COVID and kind of your problem solving, but I'm curious about when because you said before you even got there, you started to put this in motion, right? This conference idea.
Mhm.
How did you go about that? Because I know a lot of other ADs that I've talked to, or even, myself, just thinking if I go somewhere new, you kind of take some time to feel it out and, okay, what can I change? What needs to stay the same? How did you, I guess, have the confidence to be able to go in there and say, this is what we need. We need a conference. We need to play every game, every week. Let's do it. How did you kind of navigate that before you even got there?
Yeah, actually, it began in the interview. Although my current head of school was recruiting me to go, I still interviewed with the current head of school at Stonehill at the time. Just like you said, again, get a feel for what was like in India, what's going on and whatnot. And so in that conversation, I brought up the fact that, why isn't there something like this? And we talked it through. And what he had done at that point, to give him credit, is that he went to the other heads of schools and brought this about and started the conversation. So that spring, we had our first meeting, and I was online in that meeting. And this was the meeting where we started to put things into fruition, right? And I'd experienced, working in a number of different conferences. And so I knew about how to put together bylaws and handbooks and whatnot. So that wasn't really a big deal, but that was one of the first things to do, right? So we got that together, and we just kept meeting throughout the spring. And when we got there in the fall, we really didn't know if we would be able to put it together the first fall, but things fell in place and there was enthusiasm for it. It didn't fall together exactly how it's going to be envisioned, right? The league games are going to, at this point, are single round robin, and they're kind of more friendly type of games. And then we work towards that tournament at the end. Eventually, it will be a double round robin tournament or double round robin season. And so anyway, basically, like I said, you start the ball rolling with a conversation. You need others to make things happen. And really, the head of school at that time started the conversation amongst others. People got enthused about it, and we were able to run with it.
That's some great tips already. Yeah, it's great. You have to have that support system, right? That's very important to start something like that. I'm curious. You work in India now. You've worked in Korea and San Francisco. What are some unique things about working in India? Because there's a massive cricket culture, of course. What are some of the sports that you play, and how do you navigate that? How do you pick those sports?
Okay. Yeah, surprisingly enough, cricket isn't as popular amongst the schools or the international schools here. I thought it'd be a more popular sport, but football is the number one sport. When I say football, I'm talking soccer. I've had to change my lexicon living here in India. Football is the number one sport. Basketball, swimming are the pretty core sports. We've added volleyball. Badminton's a big sport. Cross country, tennis, and we do have cricket. It's just like I said, I'm surprised it's a popular sport. Don't get me wrong, it's a popular sport in the country itself for sure, but amongst the international schools, it's not as popular as I thought it would be.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I guess you find the same thing here though, Jeff, with wrestling, right? Like wrestling and archery. Horse riding, I guess you wouldn't really do that in schools on a competitive level, but they're not, those horse wrestling and archery are two things you could easily do in a school, but they're just not big in the competition side of things, where we do have basketball and volleyball and football. I too have had to change my lexicon. I still call it soccer, and all the Brits that I work with correct me very regularly. Where are you at now, though, John, in terms of COVID and getting back to maybe having some competitions? Are you able to kind of pick things up from when you first got there?
So we met at the beginning of the year, right, to take a look at how the year would unfold, and obviously the first season of sport wasn't going to happen. So I'm the commissioner of the conference right now, and so with the other ADs, we decided on looking at season 2 and if that was going to unfold and how that would look. So we changed the sports and we looked at distanced, socially distanced sports and appropriate types of sports and what we could do. And we decided upon 5-a-side soccer and 7-a-side soccer for high school and track and field, right? So we began that in November, beginning of November, and then another wave hit, right? So we had 2 weeks of practice, and then we had to tell the kids that we're sorry, but you got to go home, right? And we couldn't do any more after school sports until that. However, where we're at right now is we are about to go back to school, which is exciting. We're about to let the kids back on campus next week and have full-fledged school days. Still, we're going to have to move slowly with the after-school activities and kind of see how that plays itself out. I met with we had a brief meeting in January, more of a WhatsApp meeting. But we're going to meet on February 9th to take a look at, again, where we're at, what sports will make sense, what kind of activities will make sense. And again, I think what happens this year is you just sort of feel it out one step at a time and just try to create things as they go and then plan for next year to be a normal year,
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. What are some of the virtual things you've implemented, John?
Well, we had a virtual swim event planned.
Nice.
And our students had a science bowl, virtual science bowl, where they had students from all around the world. They had, I think, 150 participants from 14 different countries, and in a live event, which was, to me, it was amazing because they spanned from the United States all the way to Korea. And so there were some kids up late night, I'm sure, participating in the Science Bowl. But along with that, and then we're planning, our art program is planning an exposition with other schools on cultural, just looking around the different arts from the world, in their various cultures, and doing this on a global platform that, again, when you're not doing things in person, you have to try to figure out how to get creative. And so one of the things that I did was I met with, through the Globetrottin ADs, right? Great network, super network. And so I met up with a guy that was the athletic activities director in Bogota. And we hit it off. We had some good conversations. And I threw an idea at him. And I said, look, I can't have sport events and I can't have activities events, but why can't I do something that's like sports, but for math, right? Or for English? It's the same thing. In sports, we put together these kids and they practice, then there's an event, right? So why can't we do something for, an English class where they do, a poetry slam? So they work on it for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden we have a poetry slam and we invite these other schools. And I was thinking of doing it virtually just for the schools in Bangalore. And then Freddie Badillo was saying, why don't we participate in that? I mean, you're doing it virtually, right? Why can't we just do that globally? Why can't we figure this thing out? And so that conversation expanded, and we brought in some other ADs from around the world, and we formed this group, and then we put together what's called the Global Interscholastic Association, which is this platform for students to connect, collaborate, and compete. So 3 different ways that you can put your activities on board there. So some of the things that, like I said, the swim competition can be their virtual swim competition. Moscow, I noticed that you had a interview with Kirby. He put on a great cross-country meet that if it wasn't for his meet, we would have not had any activity or any physical activities in the fall. But when he put that on, I could justify putting together some kids and practicing and running cross-country and forming a team, right? So that would be something that you compete on, right? The virtual event where we're going to do this art, right, can be something where you're just connecting on, right? Where people are just saying, here's what we do in our part of the world, and we're just going to show it to you, right? Collaboration can be either, a number of these programs that we all have in our schools that are service-oriented programs that are global, right? They can get together, collaborate, and maybe raise money for a certain project. Can be on the collaborate side, right? So this is going to be something that we're going to be launching here probably within the next month. But it's, again, this is where, even as we go back to school, one thing we've learned about with COVID is that we can connect globally. And, I'm dating myself, but when I was a kid, we had these things called pen pals, right? So I would write a letter to somebody and, I'd wait a couple months later and I get this letter back and I go, oh, great, I got a letter from Jeffrey in Amsterdam, or Holland. And I'd be so excited about it because I connected, right? Well, we can do that immediately now. So these things are there for us to do that we're always there, but we're just kind of forced upon us with COVID, which is a positive.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Sorry, CD, go ahead, my friend.
I was just going to say, we had an interview last year where one of the takeaways was just don't forget all the silver linings. I wasn't Kirby. It was, I forget who it was, somebody else who had, I think, participated in Kirby's cross country event. And just saying, like, these are the things that when we go back to normal or whatever normal will be, like, we need to remember to continue to do these sort of things, because it's not that hard to connect globally, as we're finding out.
No, it's super easy to do. It's just that, and that's what this GIA website and this platform is going to be there. It's going to be for anybody just to put something up. I got an event. If you want to participate, contact me. Kind of a clearinghouse for networking around the world.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing how much the Globetrottin ADs have done for the virtual world, actually. They started only 6 months earlier than we started our podcast, actually, and we met them through the NYAAA. And what they've accomplished so far is amazing. My kids joined their leadership fair last year. They did a presentation about Mongolian sports, and it was just great. They had some guest speakers. So I'll add all the descriptors of all the links from them in our descriptor, and then you can just check it out. And joining them is awesome. And the kids are gaining from it, and we do too, actually, as ADs. So that's awesome.
Right. We too participated in that student-led conference. Yeah, I had a group of kids putting together something on team bonding and chemistry in international schools, because you have such a transient population of students that, so unlike, again, growing up in the States where you're going to school with these guys for 4 straight years, the same kids, that doesn't happen in international schools. So every year you kind of have a new group. So they put on a presentation on, okay, how do you go about, creating that cohesive unit, right? It was cool. It was a great opportunity.
Oh, that's really awesome. How do you, John, take your personal philosophy to these schools? And I guess you've hinted at a few things about, what you believe and what you're trying to accomplish. But I guess, what is your personal philosophy about sports and an athletic program, what it should be, and how do you bring that to your school that you're at now?
So I started out teaching English and history and coaching, right? So I got an education because of coaching, but you have to have a job too, right? Coaching doesn't pay the bills. So I found that although I love the classroom and I love teaching and the interaction in the classroom, I found that the impact I made as a coach on the actual individual and on their personal skills, not their academic skills, but their personal skills, what they can learn about themselves, what they're capable of achieving, put in stressful situations, right? And especially for teenagers, I've been, teaching since 1991, again, dating myself here, but working with high school kids is great because they're almost adults, but they're not adults. They're still operating on that emotional level. The amygdala is bigger than any other aspect of their brain, and so they're nervous and they play on the emotions. And so their biggest fear is this thing called adulthood right around the corner. And am I capable, of achieving the expectations that people have for me, right? And so I found that in sports, I build confidence. That's the thing. You build confidence and you take kids who, and I've coached at different levels, right? I've coached novice athletes and I've coached experienced athletes. And to be honest with you, I love coaching the novice athletes because they're the ones that don't bring any garbage into it, the baggage into it. They just come and want to learn. but they question themselves, and they're the tough ones to take a risk. So when you say, hey, do this, they're not so sure that they'll give maybe 25, 50%. And it's not because of an attitude, it's because of the fear that they can't do it. But when you coach them through it and they finally can do it, boom, light bulb goes off. It's super exciting to see, and they're ready to do the next step, right? Whatever it is. And I see that much more in sports, right? And then I do in the classroom, as far as I'm concerned, as far as what I was doing. And it's also an opportunity to really teach character, because, as they say, right, person's true character comes out in competition, and so we can look at ourselves and we can see and we can reflect upon what works and what doesn't work, right? And so, when part of the reason I got out of the classroom and into the administration aspect is because, I learned a great deal I had some great coaches. I learned a great deal from my own coaching, mistakes. And then I saw that, there were, I don't want to put it in a negative light, but a lot of coaches out there, they lose the focus of what's really important. And I did too. One of my biggest lessons early on was, of course, you're a new coach, you want to win, right? So you got to get out there and you got to focus on winning. And the reality is, you don't focus on winning, you focus on the process and the successes that come within the process. My wife would laugh at me because I would come home every practice and I'd be so excited about practice today. Oh, this happened in practice, that happened in practice, such great practice. And then I'd come home from a game and I wouldn't say a word. And she'd go, did you win? Oh yeah, we won. Well, aren't you excited? Well, yeah, I mean, things happen like they should happen, whatever. But, I was more excited about seeing those light bulbs go off at practice. And so the philosophy, when I first wrote down my philosophy, right, it was probably like 3 pages, right? But now it's really 3 sentences. And the first one is to get the athlete to believe or trust, interchangeable, believe or trust in themselves, right? Get them to believe in themselves. So that's the first thing a coach has to do, is work with the athlete, believe you can do it, trust you can do it, get out there and do it, work hard. And then the second one is, once they start to believe in themselves, they need to believe in their teammates. Because how often do we have that athlete that is afraid to pass to the other teammate because the other teammate isn't as good and they're going to make a mistake, right? And as we learned from watching the Netflix special on Michael Jordan, he didn't start winning championships until he passed to his teammates, right? Until he gave the others an opportunity to be success or fail, right? And he found that they could be successful too, right? And so giving your teammates the opportunity, it builds up growth. Well, I'm from the Bay Area, so we got the Warriors. And I think the greatest thing about Steph Curry is not his shooting. It's the ability he has to make others better players, giving them the opportunity, to be successful or not be successful. And then that team grows around it. And then finally is believe or trust it can happen, right? Meaning that it doesn't matter who you play, it matters how you play. So I'll use an American football analogy on this. If I'm a lineman at the end of the line, right, tackle we call them, and there's a play where we have a sweep, so somebody's supposed to come around the outside of me, running back's supposed to come around the outside of me. My job is to get and hook the defensive end, right, just to get in his way, block him, and so the guy can run outside. Well, if I get up to the line of scrimmage and I look and this guy's 100 pounds heavier than me, and I'm focused on how big that dude is, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's big and he's all these things. I'm focused on him. Then I'm taken away from my own job and what I can do well. And maybe I'm really quick off the line. And if I'm focused only on what I got to do, then when that ball snaps, I'm quick off the line. I may find that I'm faster than him. And yeah, maybe he crushes me, right? But I got in his way. And that running back got around the corner and we were successful. I don't have to beat that guy up. I just have to do what I got to do, right? And so if you focus on what you have to do in the best of your possible way you can do it, then let the cards fall. And that's how upsets happen, right? And I've had some of the most, the greatest coaching experience I've had have come in losses, and because you've had incredible games. And at the end of the game, when you don't win, one of 2 things happens. Either you lost, which means you didn't play well. You just didn't play well. You didn't live up to what you could do, or you played well, you played great, and that other team played better. And you know what? That's a great experience. There's so much value in that, right? You just tip your hat and you say, hey man, awesome game. Great job. I feel great about what I did. You're better than me today. Let's play again tomorrow. So that's why, where we in sports, where I think you build those things, and it's just an incredible experience that that not just kids, adults, anybody can experience when done right.
Thank you, John. I found it amazing how you explain it so clearly. I'm always jealous at people like you who can explain it so nice and just very clear, and it clicks. I was like, yes, 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 I think that too. Really awesome. How do you share this with your coaches, with the students? I find it so difficult these days that the things that you mentioned, the kids struggle with that. Some of the coaches too. So how do you share that with them?
Okay. So yeah, going back a step, one of the things I did when I became an athletic director also is I saw that a lot of schools, we have to hire outside coaches. We don't have that educational philosophy behind it, right? And the outside coaches are great, but they are just, again, missing some of those components about the character aspect and how important that really is. So I joined the American Sport Education Program, and at the time, in the States, every coach had to go through this certification program. So I became an instructor. I wanted to get out there and instruct and teach these coaches and talk to them about it, right? And as I bring it back to my own coaches, it really comes back to a lot of things. But one of my personal ways of getting things through is early and often, right? If I can communicate something early to you, right? And if there's an issue that comes up, then I communicate it, it's only an issue. It's not a problem, right? Often, if I can keep that communication going often. And some of this communication, as far as, the character aspects, right, is you just break it down to, like I said before, the process and finding success in the process, and knowing that and educating these coaches that they're working with kids, right? And how does the mind work? How do their minds work? And their antennas are up, and they're emotional. They're real emotional antennas. There's no cookie cutter mold. Some kids, I've had kids that wanted to be yelled at to motivate them, right? They wanted to get barked at because that got them fired up, right? Whereas other kids, you have to really make them feel good about themselves first, right? Before you can criticize them. The sandwich, right? You're great, but this could be better. You're still great. But the thing is that if we're focused on the individual, or focused on the process, the outcome will happen. Winning will happen. And if it doesn't happen, playing your best, John Wooden, being the best you can possibly be, you got to be proud of that, And so it just comes with, communicating that to the kids. And, I took on this basketball program last year. This is kind of funny. So first day of practice, they came up and said, "Oh, coach, we're going to win this tournament. We got to win this, we got to win this championship." And I started looking, and I go, "Well, I don't care about winning." And they're like, "What do you mean?" "I don't care about winning. I care about, seeing you get better every single day." And, and we start talking about the process, and then we go out there and we work hard every day. And, we don't have a very long time to get ready for this tournament. Well, we go up to the tournament, and sure enough, we win our first game. And, we're lined up and we're walking across, shaking hands, right? And the kids go first and I'm last. And I start talking to the coach, and I look back and all my guys are crying. Crying? Why are you crying? It was the first game they had ever won in this conference. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? How could you have not won any games? I mean, right? It's honestly, the competition level wasn't that great, Anyway, it was just such an emotional, thing. It was funny. We played back to back. So I said, "That's great. I mean, enjoy the experience, but get over it. Let's go. We got to play again." But I never had a group of guys cry, right? The first game of the tournament. But that's, again, the emotional aspect, the thing for them. That was it right there. They could have walked away from that tournament. They did walk. We ended up going to the championship and losing. But it didn't matter. After the first game, that was it.
That's awesome, John. I can relate to a lot of that. Just doing the right things, being focused on just getting better every day. And sometimes you play really well and still come up short. And those are the tough losses, but those are the losses that you can be proud of when you look back on, right?
Yeah.
So you might have already shared it, but it's kind of the next question I had in my mind is what's something you're most proud of that you've accomplished in your time as a AD or coach? What's something you've been able to do?
Yeah, I think, it goes along the lines with coaching teams that were successful, right? And we didn't necessarily win championships. But I mean, well, for example, we played in the Far East tournament. I was coaching at Seoul International School. We're playing the Far East tournament, and we were lucky to be there. We're just happy to be there. I did have a good player. I had a really good player who was about a 5'11" Korean kid who could just jump outside the building. So he could play 1 to 5 and super player. And we went into this tournament against great teams. In fact, the host team was in Iwakuni, and they had a 6'8" center, and they had 3 guards that could shoot from the outside, and they could just drain threes, right? And so they were our last game in pool play, but the entire week they were just crushing teams. They were beating teams 160 to 84 and things like that, right? And so going into the game, I just talked to my guys, and the other things, they would press you the entire game, right? That's why they're winning so big, right? So they never pulled off their press. It wasn't that cool, but whatever. That's how they played the game. Well, we had a very basic press break, but it was built on patience. To drill it, we would pass the ball back and forth, rotate the ball back and forth, and cross over at 9 seconds in practice. So they knew how long 9 seconds was, which is a long time. So we never panicked in rotating the ball. So anyway, we had a decent press break, and of course in the middle of the court was our best player. So if we can get him the ball by rotating the ball, then we're pretty good, right? Anyway, we go into this game, and I tell the guys, listen, you know what? I don't really care what the score is at the end of the game. Okay, I'm not going to count on that. And by the way, everybody, it was they're the home team, so they had all the students there. It was the last game of pool play, so all of the other teams were there too. So it was like a championship game. And of course, none of the other teams are cheering for these guys because the sportsmanship was a little, shaky, right? And so anyway, I said, listen, people are going to judge you not by whether you win or lose today, but they're going to judge you by your character, by how you get out there, right? And if you give up, they're going to judge you about giving up. But if you don't give up, and you play every possession, like we play in the schoolyard, next bucket wins, right? Next bucket wins. Okay, you scored that one. Give me a ball. Next bucket wins, right? Forget what just happened. And so we played this game, and I won't go into the whole game, but I'll just tell you the final score was 112 to 92 in 8-minute quarters in a high school basketball game. Our kid scored 45 points because he broke the press. His first 3 times down, he went right at the 6'8" center, drew 3 fouls right off the bat. So the 6'8" center had 6 minutes left to go in the first quarter, had 3 fouls on him. So every time our kid went up, Eugene went to the basket, he just stepped away and let him have the score. Because they could go down, obviously, and score at will, right? But our kids just never gave up, right? And it was just amazing because at the end of the third quarter, their coach, who had been sitting with his legs crossed all week long, just watching everything, smiling away, was up, and he was screaming and he's pointing at his kids. And so what I did, you get off your bench, and I'm with my assistant coach. I look over and I see this happening. So I brought my team up and I said, okay, you guys come here. And I said, look over there. I go, look what you've done. Look what you've done, right? You got this guy. He's afraid of you right now. We're at that point, we were down by 10 points, right? And, and I go, I don't care what happens in the fourth quarter. You guys have already won the game, right? So now just play with that confidence, go out there, and who cares what make it happen. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? Anyway, so we lost by 20, but we set a record for most points scored in the Far East tournament, combined scores between the 2 teams. And our kids were heroes. At the end of the day, we're, these Far East tournaments, you're all living on the same compound, military base. So there's like one pizza place and everyone meets at it that night, right? So our kids were walking around and they were superstars. It was so fun. It was so cool.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's an awesome story. And I think CD and I can relate to that with a lot of things that we've been doing too, really showcases your philosophy too, and that's really nice to hear. It's a great story. Yeah, so we're nearing the end of our podcast. We are going into the 40-minute mark right now, which is awesome. We have so much more to talk about, but we have to keep it a little bit short. So you are an experienced athletic administrator, John. Do you have any tips for younger ADs or starting or just going overseas? Like just some tips that you say, hey, I wish that I knew those when I went overseas and started my first job.
Yeah. Details. Really get to know what the details are. And you're mentioning going overseas, right? Get to, do a lot of homework, do a lot of research, do a lot of asking questions, right? When you get there, ask questions. Don't come in with an ego. I don't care how many years I had been, a coach or an AD in the United States. When I went back to Korea, I dropped my ego because it was a whole different country. Now, and I come here to India, drop the ego because it's a whole different country, and I'm learning. So I'm the novice here, right? I'm the rookie. So yeah, pay attention to details. Learn as much as you possibly can about the culture, the environment. You're going to get frustrated. Also, have a sense of humor. You have to have a sense of humor. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy. But yeah, that and then with your coaches, again, focus on the students, not on the results. The results, they come later, and just have fun with it, and make sure that they understand that the educational value of educational ecosystem that these kids come into is multiple. It's not just the academics, right? It's student life, right? And it's the sports. And so, their experience in sports may be what they remember the rest of their lives. They might not remember physics class, but they might remember playing on your badminton team, And so those experiences, and they're sponges. These kids they're emotional and they're sponges. And so again, remember what your position is, be professional, right? But be empathetic and, just have fun. And if you're going to have fun, the others around you will have fun too.
Yeah, definitely. That's great advice for new athletic directors. John, I'm curious, what's next for you? What are you kind of looking forward to in the future?
Finishing what I wanted to start up here, I got here, we started something. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of work to do still, but then again, you can make plans and then you don't know what happens. So you just kind of have to go one step at a time, right? So the future is next week, when kids come back on campus and what that's going to look like. And so, yeah, the springtime, I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but we can plan for the future next fall. Eventually they'll have this program because it is in the mission statement, right? And the school identity, we would like to eventually maybe start an international conference. We're not in an international conference right now. It's kind of tough to join them right now, especially with COVID. But there's a lot of schools out there and a lot of schools that are not in international conferences. So it's great to have that opportunity to travel, experience different cultures, and set up something like that. So that's another goal for us here at Stonehill, is to start up an international conference, and then really just, again, make it the best possible program it can possibly be.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, that's and even maybe something virtual, John, internationally, right? It's like there's so many options these days. So if you do something, let us know. You will definitely join.
Okay.
I want to thank you so much for being here with us today to share your expertise and your philosophy. It's really good to hear. I'm always looking for little quotes from people, so I got a few here. This is awesome. We want to thank you for your time, everything you shared today. We will stay in contact, and I just thank you so much.
Well, I think what you guys are doing is great too, and so I appreciate it, and I'm honored that you asked me on here today.
Yeah, thanks a lot again, John. And really quick, what was the name of the initiative, or with the international schools joining globally or virtually? What was the name of that?
So it's the Global Interscholastic Association.
Global Interscholastic
I'll
Association.
pass that link on to you. We don't have much up there yet, but if you guys have some activities that you want to put on there, we can put on there. And like I said, we're going to start to launch it and try to get more schools to put activities up there and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's
great.
awesome.
Yeah. Connections, right? It's all about connections. And if GoFit is giving us one thing, is an opportunity to connect with each other virtually. So again, join that. And we will add the link in the description too for people who want to have more information about that. Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Have a good day. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. And we stay in contact.
All right. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you later, John.
Goodbye.
All right. So we just wrapped up our interview. Great interview. My big takeaway is just that he's starting the online stuff with the virtual connecting international schools. We're trying to do that. We're trying to do things more virtual, here, maybe with a few connections we have. But if there's a platform that schools can join, or that us as athletic directors can kind of post things and get some feedback, get some people to join in, I think that's going to be just great, and hopefully provide a lot more opportunities for our kids to train, maybe have some badminton practices. Or I don't know how you do badminton virtually, but cross country. Okay, now let's train. There's a race in 3 weeks. Let's do some runs after school, or swimming, right? Whatever the case may be. I think that's going to be just a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. And I really, like I said in the podcast, I'm getting jealous of how some people can just vocalize the philosophy so well. You can see he's very experienced in what he's doing. He knows why he's doing certain things and how he's doing it, and how he vocalizes that in 3 very simple sentences. He went from 3 pages to 3 sentences. I think that's important to do sometimes. Just write it down for yourself, and then see if you agree with that, and maybe let your coaches write it down, and then how does that align or not align, and work on that. Yeah, great to connect. And like John was saying, there's so many opportunities now virtually. Seek out for them, and there's you can always contact us to have more information about that. There's different platforms, different podcasts, different ADs or schools throwing things out there. You just have to click on yes, I'm joining, and then just follow them along, right? But that's great.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, check out the Globetrottin ADs. We had them on the podcast ages ago. I think when we first started, it was one of our first interviews that we had. Mm-hmm. They've got their network that you can join. They put on stuff for students, student leadership stuff that relates to athletics, but can also just be more student life related. So definitely that'd be a great place to start to get more information on how you can connect with people or pick people's brains. I think John mentioned that's where his whole idea to start this virtual platform came from, was just through connecting with some people on there. So yeah, just a quick shout out to those guys. Check them out if you haven't already.
Yeah, definitely do that. And not only for the athletes, but also for administrators, activities coordinators, PE teachers, anybody, coaches. They're also doing things for them. And we might doing something in the future too. So we are connecting and making sure that everybody's gaining something from this time, because it's a difficult time. In normal times, you just run to the next tournament or the next game and getting your visas organized. So it's a bit different, but there's a great opportunity and time to educate yourself and to help your students to do other things, so that we can keep the philosophy going and doing the good things for our students. So again, we want to thank John for his time today. It's great how we have all these people on the podcast CD this season. We're learning so much from everyone. And every time I'm just getting so much information that I have to sit down sometimes and just write it down for myself. And because there's so many things that I can take away from my programs, but I cannot do everything. So again, thank you, John. Great to have you on today.
Yeah, and thank you for everyone who's watching or listening at home. Make sure you like and subscribe. That way, the next time we have a guest that will have something to say that could resonate with you, you'll be right there with us. So thanks again to all of our listeners and subscribers. We appreciate you. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.